Morning, everybody. I'm Andrew, Project Director from Pinnacle. We're an FF&E consultant and manufacturer covering across the UK. Doing a little bit in Lagos in Nigeria at the moment as well, so I'm sure we'll be able to help out our Irish colleagues that are here. First of all, I'm just going to reiterate some of the information we had earlier in terms of setting the scene, and then the role of research that our partner VS have done on loose furniture, and the role within education. And then I've just got three areas of discussion around fitted furniture, how we maximise our estates, and then investing for the future with loose furniture. So we've already had a lot of detail from the DFE on the needs and the increasing needs and the more. But really, I guess the overarching message on this slide is the fact that there's more and more pupils with an SEN diagnosis that are in mainstream education. So we're now in 2023, that went up to 17.3%. Quick poll, 10 years ago, what do we think that number was? So the first one's going to be less than 5%, second one is between 5 and 10, and the third is between 10 and 17. So those who think it's less than 5, show your hands. Anyone who thinks it's between 5 and 10% 10 years ago? And between 10 and 17%. So the answer in Jan 2013, it was 2.8% of students with an SEN vision were in mainstream schools. So we can see the exponential growth over the last 10 years. So the challenge is there's a real driving need for accessible and adaptive learning environments to bridge the gap and ensure that everyone has an equal opportunity. And one of the solutions is using FF&E strategically to break down those barriers and cater to diverse need. So this piece of work that's been undertaken by VS Furniture, who are based in Germany, manufacturing Germany. There's some of their product behind me. So it's been done in conjunction with other partners. It's an excellent resource. If anyone wants a link to it, then please reach out to me and we can make that available. But essentially, it's showing that the importance of the environment of the student. So the environment the student's in is their third teacher. And FF&E, what the child's sitting on, what they're interacting with, is really, really important in that environment and that experience. As we said, it's not all about the outcome, it's also about the experience of the child as they go through their time at school. So then moving on to fitted furniture. So FF&E, for those who aren't aware of what it means, so it means furniture, fixtures and equipment. So the fitted furniture are the elements of the building that are fitted to the fabric of the building. So things like the sink units, fitted cupboards, cloakrooms, science benches, food tech rooms, that sort of thing. So what to consider when choosing fitted furniture? So there is no industry standard to manage quality control within FF&E. The output specifications are fairly generic to allow there to be a wide range of manufacturing supply into the industry. But knowing whether something's fit for purpose can be quite a minefield. So for instance, panel thicknesses vary from manufacturer to manufacturer from 12 mil to 25 mil. Hinge quality, ideally your hinge needs to be at least 150 degrees opening, so they open out onto the cupboard next to them, so they don't get accidentally snapped off if they're only 90-degree hinges. Having handle-less cupboards removes another point of potential damage or snagging points, especially where you've got pupils in electric wheelchairs. They might be turning around and accidentally knock a handle off. And it also makes recycling of the units at the end of their useful life easier because you've got one less component to take off before you recycle it. And then robustness is really important, that you know you're buying a product that's been independently tested, because all of us in our industry will tell you that we've got the best product. So it's really important to have an independent test and certification. So we went through the journey several years ago with FIRA. So they're an independent testing house. and they look essentially at three main things. So general safety, so this is things like no sharp edges, no potential finger pinch points, no exposed fixings or other basic manufacturing issues. There's the stability, so ensure that units are firmly fixed to the wall, and tests involve monitoring the force required to pull units off the wall, and also downward pressure on base units needed to make the units collapse. And then there's structural testing or durability, which is the most critical part of the testing. This essentially gives us expected life cycles and the strength levels to the product. Hopefully this plays. So this just shows inside FIRA some of the storage testing. So essentially, the robots there, they just open and close the doors all day long and test the number of times until the product starts breaking down. That gives us an expected life cycle of the product. And when we went through this process with FIRA, our first attempt with our product as it was then, it didn't meet the level 2 severe contract use certification, which then drove us into a process of R&D to ensure that we were getting a better product. So here's an image of our product in the test rig, and you can see there a quick snapshot of the test report data. So one of the most notable developments in our journey with this independent testing was our hinge design. So we had an issue with the pull-out strength where the hinge met the carcass, and we were faced with either having to increase the wall thickness of our carcass, which obviously adds additional cost, or change the carcass material from MFC to MDF, which has added implications around environmental impact and formaldehyde emissions, etc., etc. So we went away and kind of, how do we sort this problem out? And what we did is we created a very small hinge plate, which is about this big. And this sits behind the hinge. So this is, I wanted to do this live today, but I wasn't allowed, so I had to do it in the factory and do a video. So this shows a door being wantonly taken off without a hinge plate behind it. And we can see there the damage to the carcass, which makes it very difficult to refit a hinge, which means essentially you've got to replace that carcass. So you can see the door's damaged heavily as well, and there's a lot of damage in the carcass. So what we did, this small hinge plate that goes behind the hinge strengthens the relationship between the hinge and the cupboard, and very inexpensive, wraps around the front face of the cupboard as well, and it gives you 6 fixing points into the carcass. And then when we do exactly the same, ripping the door off, it actually damages the hinge and the hinge into the door as opposed to the hinge into the carcass. So it pushes the problem onto a replaceable element and keeps that part intact. It's much easier to replace a door or a hinge than disconnect a sink or a gas tap or whatever other fitting might be in the worktop above the carcass to replace the carcass. So in the end, it was a very small improvement and a very, very minimal cost improvement, but massive advantage in terms of longevity and life cycle and maintenance. So now move on to maximising space utilisation across the school estate. So there's a need for children to feel comfortable and enjoy going to school, and especially when we have conditions where children might get sensory overload in a mainstream setting. One of the ways is to create group rooms, meeting rooms, and potentially storage areas if we bring storage into the classroom through the use of like a storage wall or a teacher wall. So then repurpose that floor space, and rather than just putting standard tables and chairs into the space, maybe put something in there that allows the child to move, have extra movement, to be more comfortable, and allows them to regroup and calm themselves down, and create a sense of harmony between the student and their surroundings. Slowing the pace, so we saw on Mark's slide earlier, that setting in Wales using the corridor as a really smart place to come out and rebalance. So use of furniture in especially long corridors, furniture and alcoves, just to discourage high-speed traffic and create places of pause and reflection. And then maximising adaptability with loose furniture. So I think this is seen best in the primary setting, in the primary school setting where there's essentially a lot of activities happening within the same environment. But if you buy furniture that is a family of furniture that can actually be adapted and used for multiple activities, you actually end up with less pieces of furniture in the classroom. So the classroom space is actually less cluttered. And it actually means that furniture can be reconfigured and used, and so the classroom can almost feel like a new space every day. Typically, that furniture is slightly more expensive than a standard 1100 by 500 chairs and posturers, tables and posturers, but it does give you that longevity and the ability to have less clutter in the classroom. So you'll see here, this is actually some of the VS's families. So you'll see in configuration 1 set up as a didactic pedagogy, as a lecture setting, and then the same furniture can be used and reconfigured into group work, and then again into a U-shape for more of a conference or group class or debate. So again, thinking about the furniture you're buying and investing in the future, so you can use the spaces for different activities. And then moving on to the actual product that we're buying. So we've got a case study. There is a case study out on our stand that VS did with Ballymena School in Northern Ireland, where they actually implemented a trial for 18 months to ensure that their furniture choices were correct. VS have been very successful in areas of the country where they're delivering PFI or where they're needing a 25-year life cycle. And it's about that long-term investment to buy quality product that stands and stands for the test of time, rather than replacing it every 5 or 10 years. So then there's also the need of movement. So a lot of the lower end cost products are very rigid and very static for that reason, so they don't have any moving parts that break. But when there's no exercise, you can see on the left-hand side, there's very little stimulation. So for persons who have struggle with concentrating and staying focused, they get agitated very, very quickly, which can then lead to sensory overload and them having to potentially leave the space. If you have a chair such as this one here, this has actually got a three-way mech in it. So when you sit on the chair, you can move any way with it. And that just means that that person's got that natural balance. So they're constantly, if you've got a fidgeter, they're constantly moving. This has also got a built-in feature, so you can't push the chair. So it stops if you're not on it. So they can't be pushed down corridors and used for rowing. And then there's other products as well. Come to the stand and have a look at them. But they're all around having that natural movement within the body. And as you can see on the right-hand side, when the person who's a fidgeter, if they're active and their furniture allows them to move, it keeps them stimulated, keeps them engaged, keeps them concentrating for longer. And then, talking about essentially putting the money up front and looking at it as an investment as opposed to just trying to get it for the lowest budget possible. So this particular product, the Club Lounge from VS, that particular school in Ballymena, Northern Ireland, were actually replacing their soft furniture on average every 12 months. Most soft seating products have a timber frame inside them or a steel frame. And if you get two largish primary or senior school students jumping on them, that frame tends to break, which then renders the chair useless. This is actually a single piece of polyurethane foam, which is then wrapped in fabric. So there is nothing in the chair to break. So they've currently had them for 8 years. And on the next slide, you'll see, although the price point's almost triple, or just over triple the price of an aspect chair, which is a very budget entry-level soft seating chair, you'll see that by year 3, they were even Stevens. And then as you went on, by the time they get to 10 years old, they're almost 3 times cheaper. So really just to prove the point that when we're looking at places where we're trying to integrate SEND into mainstream schools, think about where we could potentially invest a little bit more money to make the furniture last longer and essentially ultimately save money over its life cycle. So 3 key takeaways. Ensure your fitted furniture is independently tested. Explore creative use of small spaces to reduce challenging episodes. And consider the benefits of lifestyle costing for your loose FF&E. Thank you very much.